welcome to the DME podcast, brought to you by DME, the podcast booking platform. Whether you're a podcaster or an aspiring guest, the DME app is the perfect platform for you to get booked and manage your podcast bookings. I'm your host, Sukhay, the founder of DME, and on this podcast we'll be discussing the latest news and views in tech, the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, and even dipping our toes into the adrenaline-filled world of mixed martial arts. Today, we're digging into the world of cybersecurity and diving into the largest cyber event of the year, the recent ransomware attack that brought esteemed British car maker Jaguar Land Rover to their knees. Joining me is Chris Wood, founder and CEO of CyberQ Group, a Birmingham-based cybersecurity company protecting organisations across the globe. In this episode, Chris draws upon his extensive experience to unpack what really happens when a major company is hit by ransomware, why government intervention in JLR's case was unprecedented, and how AI and the Internet of Things are changing the threat landscape. We also talk about Birmingham's growing tech scene and why the West Midlands could become the UK's next big cybersecurity powerhouse. So let's get into it. Chris Wood, welcome to the DME podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Really excited to be here today.
I should thank you more than anything, because I know you're a busy man, and in the world of cybersecurity, it's quite the challenging and interesting time. So do you want to just give our audience a little bit of a background to yourself and CyberQ, which you have set up and founded?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of been in cybersecurity now for about 30 years. So, I am that old, really, when I think about how 30 odd years, 27, 28 years. So I started life as a kind of a penetration test and network security for a company called Fujitsu. So I worked at Fujitsu for about 7 years. And then worked for another company called Hewlett Packard. So I was one of the directors at HP, was a class consultant there, which again did a lot for the UK government, GCHQ or CSG when I was there, and worked for a couple of years at the European Space Agency. So I was based out of Italy. So did a couple of years out in Frascati. Fantastic place. If you ever get the chance, not just the wine, but the location is amazing. After HP, I went to Qatar. So I went out to go and live in Qatar and worked for the Qatar Foundation for the best part of 4 years. And then I came back, when did I come back? About 2016, 2017, and created CyberQ Group. Clearly my midlife crisis, setting up my own business. So I set that up back in 2017. And the reason we're called CyberQ, cyber is what we do. So we're a pure play cybersecurity company. Q, because I'm a mad James Bond fan. You're going to love that or hate that, because I like Q from James Bond Innovation. And then Group, because obviously we're based in the UK, Philippines, South Africa, and the US as well. And what CyberQ Group clearly is, we work with customers across the globe to basically make their business cyber resilience. And now we do that in various ways, services and consultancy engagements, just to help our clients really and partner with our clients.
Fantastic. I mean, it's great to see Birmingham startups flourishing and thriving. And I specifically wanted to bring you on the podcast and speak to your expertise a little bit on quite a big cybersecurity story of probably the last few months, or probably this year, really, in the recent cybersecurity attack on Jaguar Land Rover, who are obviously based in Midlands and the Coventry and Warwickshire area. From my own personal network and the kind of family and friendship group, etc., I've got a lot of friends and family who kind of work at JLR at various levels. I've kind of done a stint there myself about 10 plus years ago. So I'm reasonably familiar with the organisation and know how important it is kind of to the wider economy of the Midlands and how many people actually work there. I mean, just when I was there in just one of the sites, it was like 7,000 cars every morning on site. And you kind of imagine that many people all in one place and they all kind of live within a 30-minute radius. It's a hugely important business to the Midlands. So kind of hearing about the cybersecurity vulnerabilities they had, or the cyber attack that they had, and the shutdown they experienced, it was quite the prescient topic of conversation and kind of a bit of a worry. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak to the recent attack on JLR and what you kind of know about it in terms of how were they attacked, when were they attacked, and kind of what an organisation does when such an incident happens.
Yeah, can do. Yeah, I mean, a lot to cover there. Obviously, I've got to kind of give a caveat. I haven't been involved in the Jaguar Land Rover attack, so we've only got public available information that I know about it. But just to concur, really, it's been a devastation for the West Midlands, because of what's happening in the supply chain, and it's awful to see, really, and it's a first. You've got to see this as a first from a cyber breach where the UK government has signed off what 1.9 billion pounds.
Mm.
We've never seen that before. So you think of all the cyber attacks that we've seen over the last kind of 10, 15 years. We've never seen the UK government step in and underwrite a loan for that organisation. So again, that gives you an idea of the severity of what that organisation is under. And what we've kind of gleaned really from Jaguar Land Rover, public available information, I should say, is it looks like the attack was a particular group that went after that company. It looks like to be a few ways they've got in. One was kind of credential theft, using a little bit of social engineering. We're seeing that on a regular basis. Social engineering is used, getting credentials either off the dark web, deep web, open source. There's various methods that they could use, telephones to the help desk, etc., which we've kind of got from public available information. That's the way they've got in. Once they've got into the system, or once they've got access, even if it's low privilege access, it looks like they've moved around in the environment. And as they've moved around the environment, they've basically got admin access, which is enabling them to deploy their tools and to deploy, obviously, the ransomware that there's deployed. Now, I think dates could be off here, but I think it was the 1st of September when the actual IT company, again, without naming the IT company, actually picked that up. And their first response was obviously to turn things down and shut it down to try and get a good handle, really. That's always a bad place to be. Having been an incident responder myself, the whole point of businesses is to be resilient, so continue through in any attack or any kind of big risk that's happening to that organization. And the shutting the system down, which then has in turn created the ramifications, really, to Jaguar Land Rover, where obviously the supply chain has to shut down as well. And it's took them about 5 or 6 weeks, I believe, to get them up and ready. And again, that devastation they're still going through at the moment. So here we are talking on the 31st of October on Halloween. Hopefully there's no cyber attacks today on Halloween, or no witches about. But again, it's awful. And having been through a lot of incident responses, the one thing that we don't talk about, which has been very serious, I imagine, at the senior management, the CEO, is the mental stress that these organizations go through. Because when you go through an attack, your first thing you need to do is do some kind of containment. And that containment is about figuring out, well, what actually happened. Now, if your attack has been in the network for 200 or 300 days, which again is kind of an average, 216 is the exact, then it's really hard for you to figure out in 2 to 4 hours, what do I need to do? And also the attacker tends to have deployed it in such a way, because they've been in your network so long, that it's really hard for you to try and gain back access, because they know your move once you discover that they were there. So it kind of shows you their mind space, where they've just said, shut the system down and let's take it from there. So at least you get in the mind of the attacker of what's actually happened there. I think without going on to learnings, we'll talk about that. I still find it flabbergasting, really, that the UK government has actually signed off that level of loan. But I appreciate why they've done it, because ultimately you have 500 people or 500 companies relying on Jaguar Land Rover and relying on the commercial revenue that they're getting from that organisation. Well, it is a first. It's a first for the United Kingdom. And also it's a first of what things may come going forward, because obviously we have different threat actors, state-sponsored, organised crime. They're actually actively trying to get into the UK critical national infrastructure and UK companies.
Yeah, so obviously, I've just kind of looked up some stats on this. I think the estimates were that it's costing JLR approximately £500 million per week. I think they said that culpability could rise to as much as 4.7 billion. And there's 200,000 jobs within JLR and in the supply chain. So it's absolutely massive. And although I was a bit of a free market libertarian, I don't like government intervention. I can thoroughly understand it in this instance, right? Because it's an unplanned for event, and it's, if all those jobs go and the company goes bump immediately, then that's a hell of a lot of economic impact, and people are not going to be able to pay their bills. So I can understand being a bit of a lender of last resort in an emergency crisis situation such as that.
Absolutely. I think that's obviously the decision that they've made, because obviously they looked at the type of attack and they've decided, well, actually, we have to underwrite the loan for that business. I mean, Jaguar Land Rover as well were profitable. So they did actually have a bit of cash in the bank. It wasn't a case of that they were in a particular bad state at the time. But cyber attacks, as we know, are devastating. And when they're operated and executed correctly, then they can put a business out, for weeks, if not months, if not years. And, there's other high level attacks that we've seen where businesses, they're still struggling to keep up. And the problem with cybersecurity in general is it's very much a cat and mouse game. So as you put better defenses up, the criminals get better at what they're doing. And artificial intelligence takes this to a new level. And different threat actors that we talk about take it to a 3 level. I mean, if we look at state sponsored and we look at organised crime, there's, in my humble opinion, there's clearly a link now with state sponsored working with organised crime to get into systems and to do big damage. And if you imagine that for a second, let's say that the 1.9 billion is underwritten by the UK government for Jaguar Land Rover. Let's say they do that for 10 companies that are in a similar situation, that have a big supply chain, that have a lot of employees. I mean, that could be 19 billion. And then you start thinking, well, how does that affect the government, the borrowing and so forth? So we do live in unprecedented times, a cyber attack where we all will get by. Well, we have an actual case study in the United Kingdom of the damage and the devastation. I mean, just going on to the West Midlands thing, we're both from the West Midlands. We both know people that work for agencies that were part of Jaguar Land Rover that haven't got paid, that couldn't pay a mortgage because of what happened. So it really is unprecedented in what we're seeing and what we're witnessing, and still going through. I mean, here we are now, things are getting better, I'm hearing, but they're still not 100%. They're still recovering from this attack.
So one of the things that you said that kind of stood out to me in terms of the technicalities of the breach and of the attack was that the hackers could have been there for, what did you say, 200 plus days?
219 days, yeah. There's an average stat. I mean, there's various stats you can use, but what tends to happen is persistent presence within the organisation. So depending on what the target is, so you have different threat actors, and maybe just very quickly, you have state-sponsored, which, are foreign countries that attack, and no doubt the United Kingdom do that as well. You then have organised crimes. Organised crimes very money orientated, pay a ransom or pay me some money, otherwise I'm going to do some bad stuff. You then have hacktivism. So hacktivism is usually people have a particular message. So if you think of a Stop Oil campaign, tend to go to social media, and then you have the insider threat, which again, the insider threat and organised crime, we're seeing a collaboration there, where the insider threat could be someone that works the organisation, potentially getting made redundant, potentially wants to sell some information, wants to get paid. That's how you used to see the threat actors. Now, I think there's a bit of blurring of the lines to a certain extent, because state-sponsored potentially can work with organised crime, insider threats can work with organised crime. So it's different ways to break it down, different methods and different attack vectors that they use.
Well, I do love a conspiracy theory as well, Chris. So we all dig it. One of the things that triggered my mind was JLR. I think they didn't start off the greatest either. I think they had an advertising campaign and a rebrand that didn't go so well. And I think they, from their own roadmap, from a product perspective, they were declaring they were going all electric by 2030, I believe.
Yes.
So to push that back a little bit. But then I kind of looking at the wider picture a little bit. It's like, who's the country that's injecting loads of subsidized electric cars into the UK market, and who are pretty savvy when it comes to cybersecurity? And obviously the China alarm bells start ringing to me. So I'm thinking state-sponsored, also with an economic espionage motive. I'm purely speculating. I wouldn't ask you to comment at all, but I think that's a very real threat as well, right? Where you see kind of on the geopolitical game, they use very much cyber hacking as a tool to do. They're not just for critical infrastructure, but if they can cripple large companies that are important to a region of a particular country, then it must be beneficial, right? If it helps their own businesses out in those particular markets, then it's a win-win and relatively low-cost way of taking down some of your competitors.
Absolutely. And to back at you mentioned China there. I mean, I think we would be disappointed in the UK if we were in a kind of a life and death situation, if obviously the event was serious enough, that we wouldn't do the same ourselves. And the US, and I always like talking about Edward Snowden. When I work a lot in America, and there's a really interesting question. I mean, hopefully this podcast isn't going out to the US. It may get there, but the question that I like to
downloads as a can.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, if it does, one of the questions I love to say to my American friends is, Edward Snowden, was he a patriot or a traitor? And that question alone really gets people thinking. You have a lot of thoughts that he was a traitor. He betrayed all the secrets. He was a contractor. He told everyone. And then someone says he's a patriot because he's trying to wake up the US about what's happening. And he clearly stipulated there that the UK and the US, which we know, and the Five Eyes have worked, extensively together for 100 years now, and obviously sharing information and helping each other is going there. So when you speculate about China, when you speculate Russia, when you speculate North Korea, I mean, we can argue speculation, but we know it goes on. It's stealing intellectual property. And to be fair, we're not actually saying this. The head of NCSE is saying this. If you look at his recent press releases, he talks about China, he talks about Russia, and he talks about North Korea. Now, just to give you an insight, when I was working for the UK government, it was very not right to name countries because of the offence. So they used to be labelled as FI, foreign intelligence. Again, showing my age here. To FI, you'd never say, oh, it's X. You'd say, oh, it's FI. But now, just by the UK government, we've seen the change where they're actually warning people, saying, well, actually, China's after your IP. And if you can break into universities and steal that IP, if you can break into companies to do that, they will do that. That's not me and you saying that. That's the head of NCSE saying that. So, and he's saying to organisation, up your game, protect your intellectual property. Cybersecurity is very, very serious, because if you think about some of the attacks that we've seen, so Jaguar Land Rover, we only saw the ransomware. Now, if I can explain that attack from a conceptual level, a ransomware for me is a bit like going into someone's house, having a look around, going up to the bedrooms, have a look at the jewelry, going around, and then after I've finished, I walk out of the house and I'm like, what else can I do? And then I throw a petrol bomb into the house and let the house burn, and then I'm going to sell you some water. In our case, I'm going to sell you some encryption keys to get your data back. And that, in essence, is the way I would describe a ransomware, where if they've been there for a long time and it's planned, and this one definitely was planned and executed, very well, what we understand from publicly available information and the impact that it's had. But you imagine, what else did they get? Did they get the intellectual property? Did they get the new designs? Did they get some IP around electric cars? Is that for sale at the moment? Is it for sale in 2 years' time? Is that appeared in someone's, a foreign intelligence kind of database? These are some really interesting questions, and I don't actually think it's conspiracy theory anymore. It's actually real life, because all countries want to try and get ahead of each other. And Edward Snowden, again, referencing him, he talks about the US bugging Germany. I don't know if you remember that. They made the news in the art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a friendly country. Germany's mature as well, but we know that went on internally. So again, I don't think it's conspiracy. I think this is I don't want to say the new normal, but this is normality, isn't it? Really, of what goes on.
Yeah, well, it's funny you kind of mentioned the ransomware. As you're describing it, I'm a bit of a history fan, and it reminded me, I think his name is Cato in ancient Rome. He used to, really rich guy in ancient Rome, had all the senators in his pocket, but he used to own the fire service in the See of Rome. And obviously these fires would spring up, and they would have their expensive properties, and these normally the nobility and the senators, etc. And he used to rock up with his fire crew standing outside going, I can put it out for you, but you're sending me at pennies on the dollar, or what was he, denarii? Yeah, denarii, pennies on the denarii, or you can let it burn. And inevitably, that's how he became one of the richest men in Rome, because you own the fire service. So, and it says the methods don't change, do they?
They don't. Absolutely, and there's 2 points there. I like history as well. I mean, the Rothschilds, obviously, when they bought the stock exchange for $1 because they got the information, they put the information, the rumor out that the French had won the war, so everyone was panicking and walking in. And actually, they got a carrier pigeon, wasn't it? They came back and they told them that the English had won, so they could buy. And again, they ended up being quite wealthy as well. I think one of the things with cybersecurity is generally, and having been in cybersecurity for on 30 years, is that we think it's complex. And what I mean by that is that when we talk about malicious software, security operations center, viruses, we scare people. I find we scare people, and we've done an awful job of that. But there's no difference between cybersecurity and physical security, in my humble opinion. And we can all talk about physical security. We can all talk about, if we have the crown jewels, if I was lucky enough to have the crown jewels in my house, just having some good locks and a CCTV maybe doesn't cut the mustard, does it? Maybe I need more protection, and this protection can come in different folds and different ways. Cybersecurity is no different. Our data's in the cloud and we think we're secure. Yeah, but how are you secure? How are you protecting that data? I mean, I suppose that's why companies like CyberQ Group are quite busy, because we help organisations do that. But in essence, I think that's where we kind of need to take the debate a little bit. I mean, Jaguar Land Rover, if that was a physical asset, somebody got into that building, someone sat in that building for a very long time, someone snooped around, and then once they finished, they decided to throw a petrol bomb, which is the ransomware, which for me isn't a particularly incredibly hard or complex piece of software. In essence, all it actually does is encrypt the data, and then they have the key. And sometimes when the incident responses, you can actually get the key. If it's a new ransomware, obviously that's more difficult because the key won't be available. But if it's an old ransomware, you can get lucky and have the key to unlock the data. That in essence is what they've done. They just encrypted the data, and then they said, if you want the data back, pay us some money. And that in itself, I've been to, I mean, the UK government actually declares you shouldn't pay the terrorists, so to speak, or pay the organised crime. But I've been in some meetings where businesses have gone bust, and there was a logistics firm, 18 months ago, I forget the name, but obviously over a cyber attack, that was another first for the UK, went out of business. They had to let, I don't know the turnover, but I think 30, 100, 200 people work for that business. But because of this cyber attack, because of the devastation, that business went bust. So again, we're living in an era, and especially the AI, and we can come on to that later, the different types of attacks and the different devastations that we're seeing to businesses.
Yeah, so it kind of, I remember watching, I'm kind of fascinated by hackers for many a year. Don't have the ability to code a thing, but I'm fascinated by the skill set and the mindset. I remember watching a documentary on some hackers, and they were like, oh, this guy was going, my home security is he's kind of put his hand way above his head, going, my home security is up there, but your average corporation is kind of down at the knee level. And I thought, yeah, you might be right, but you also got to understand that your home and your home network is one door in, one door out.
Exactly.
Any kind of modern day business doesn't operate that way. They need to go multiple doors in and out, because they're working with different suppliers and they're working with different partners and whatever it may be. And there's multiple sites around, and they're extending their network to kind of get that. So those kind of vulnerabilities are inherently as part of the business. You can be as secure as you like, but you won't be very profitable, or you won't grow as a business very well. So it's always trying to find that balance, I suppose, between security and kind of business growth and kind of business operations. So I'm guessing that's where kind of companies such as yourself and CyberQ will kind of step in and go, right, let's have a look at your business. And it's not just about the physical, technical security side of things, but it's actually looking at the holistic process of the business as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great example, because I mean, just to give you a bit of a demo, that's something that we've seen. We you talk about physical and cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, there is no silver bullet. There is no 100% secure. It's a case of de-risking. It's the same with, if you think of that in your health. You can eat well, exercise, do all the right stuff, but nobody's gonna I guarantee you're not going to get cancer, but your risk is massively reduced, or you're not going to get a horrible disease. that's the same as cybersecurity. There's no silver bullet. I tell you what we're seeing a lot of. So you've got three things happening. You've got IT, which we all know has been with us for 20, 30 years, well, what, 34 years. You've got operational technologies, OT, so things like building management systems. And then you've got the big one, the IoT, Internet of Things. Now, we did, just to give you an idea, about 5 years ago, we got a bit of press from this. We did a penetration test, clearly I won't name the company, but a large company. And they had something called the iKettle. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but an iKettle you could buy from Amazon. I think it was about 60 quid. But the beauty of the iKettle is you could bring it into your network or bring it into your work, and you could get your phone and you could brew it at a certain temperature. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 37 degrees for green tea to get the most out of it. So this individual had bought an iKettle in, and pretty cool. He could turn his kettle on and off, and he could brew it on different temperatures, and it could make different sounds. It was quite cool. Now, we were doing a penetration test for this company, and part of that penetration test, one of the testers found that they could hack the iKettle. And it was like, great, we've hacked an iKettle, and the security was quite weak, etc., etc. And once we were on the iKettle, we were inside the network. So it enabled us to go from outside to inside the network. Once we were inside the network, we then were on the same local area network as their boardroom, where their Android TV and their microphone and all the rest of it, like any boardroom that you've ever seen in your life has a TV in it. So we actually logged on to the Android TV and recorded a board meeting. And that was a new one for me. When we played that back at the CEO, it was a board meeting here. They were going to, sack, etc., and stuff that clearly they didn't want to. And that was another kind of dimension for me, because I'm thinking, up until 5 years ago, I'm thinking, wow. And what you're seeing now, going back to the China element, but you're seeing, the LED lights that you buy that you can see all over. So they're usually from China. They have a microphone. I don't know if you noticed that. And some of the software, the IoT devices have microphone on, and people buy them and put them in their environment, and lots of other tech stuff. And that is massively on the rise of Internet of Things within inside people's home network and people's kind of personal houses. Again, we're not really talking enough about. But that just gives you the landscape of what we're seeing as a cybersecurity business. Going back to what you were saying, it's not just having your IT secure. It's making sure that when people bring in devices, that actually they understand where the security is from. When you've got an air conditioning device, when you've got the famous casino hat with the fish tank and the feeding the fish, are they secure? Because they're an avenue to get breached. And at the end of the day, going back to threat actors, if you organise crime and you just want to do ransomware, but if you want to steal IP or etc., you can use these different avenues to breach an organisation, or to breach a personal individual as well. We can talk about cameras, and there's a lot of stuff there. But again, as a cyber professional for 30 years, that's fascinating. We weren't hacking kettles when I was a pen tester, that's for sure. So anything that's connected, can be hacked. That's the way to see. If you can talk to it, you that's a risk to you and to your organisation or to your personal privacy, really.
Yeah. So what kind of steps can an organisation take kind of proactively to kind of reduce that risk? Because as you said, there's no such thing as secure. There's always an element of it, and there's a level of risk that you're willing to accept, and the corporates and the executives will kind of put a metric on that to assess that. But from a technology perspective, or even from a kind of personal behaviour perspective of your employees, what kind of steps can an organisation take to ensure that they reduce that risk as much as they can?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's all the good stuff. It's that kind of human resilience. So when we talk about human resilience, there's a couple of things there, really. It's obviously kind of awareness training. I mean, we did a deep fake kind of hack the other week, which was great. So we basically went into a Microsoft team event, and you can put the face over someone, So you can pretend to be them. Very easy to do. Same for the audio now. About a year ago, it was about 3 minutes. I'm told now it's about 10 seconds of audio. So if there's someone like myself, there's lots of audios they can get to do that. But again, if they've done identity and access, multi-factor authentication, certificates, these are different ways you can reduce the risk of exposure and reduce the risk of people getting into your network. So things like that, multi-factor authentication, that's always a good way to kind of protect your business. Cyber resilience for humans, so cybersecurity awareness training. We're seeing a massive uptake of audio and video and image of deepfakes, and that's really easy to a certain extent. If you've, myself, I've got 2 daughters. If they can get hold of my daughter's voice for 10 seconds, they can send me an audio. I'm lost. I'm borrowing my friend's phone. I need to transfer £200. Can you do it now, please? And how do they know that my daughter's out? Because they're following on social media, or not even because of that, because AI can do that at scale now, which again is a different part. So again, that human resilience, multi-factor authentication, is what I would call it really, really easy win. If organizations aren't doing that today, and most organizations that we see, should do that. The second part, which is a little bit more different, is monitoring. So the key thing with any attack, and if we go back to physical security, when you see a fire in the kitchen, put it out in the kitchen. Don't wait till you get to the living room. Don't wait till you get to the dining room. Don't wait until you get to your hallway. Put it out. But the only way you do that is by knowing there's a fire. You don't know that there's monitoring. And the key thing for us is by monitoring the environment, a security operations center or XDR or whatever, that gives you a massive chance of spotting if you've got a fire in the kitchen quite quickly. So if you see strange behavior or what they call lateral movement, which clearly happened in Jaguar Land Rover, that would have enabled them to say, actually, something's happened that's very, very suspicious. Now, it'd be interesting. Hopefully it will come out one day, a true case study from Jaguar Land Rover. It would have to be done by them, but that could be really interesting. So monitoring is a big thing. The other thing I'd say about monitoring as well, what we've seen, a lot of the IT, and this again isn't having to go in IT companies, but a lot of the IT companies tend to be network companies, tend to be, mobile comms, and then they tend to do cybersecurity. Now, our advice would be cybersecurity is a business issue. It's not an IT issue, and it's a different lens. Now, if they go with a pure play cybersecurity company, you create that positive friction. And I talk about positive friction. We do in accountancies all the time. We have, from that perspective, we have an accountant that would do your PO, accountant that does pay receivables, payroll, etc., etc. You never have 1 or 2 people that would do that. You do that segregation of duties. We're seeing that more now because we're different attacks, and Jaguar Land Rover's one particular one, but there was others. They had the same firm giving everything. So the same company was doing the networks, the same company was doing the IT, patch management. And guess what? It was doing cybersecurity as well. Now, the problem with that is that if something does happen, or there is an incident response, or the company potentially gone to sleep for a bit and they don't realise that they're open to attack, it's quite hard to say that to the customer because you're delivering the whole range of services as well. Yeah. As if you have an individual company that's just a pure play, you should create that, again, not negative, positive friction. So that's another thing to try and look at that. And the third thing is again, I'm going to have to kind of go back is the awareness, because the threats are changing. I mean, we run a number of different services for some high profile customers, and we're seeing a lot of the AI attacks, which, if you take you back 2 years ago, take you back a year ago, you'd have clever people doing clever stuff. But now you can have clever people with AI to create different personas doing more clever stuff, and they can do it at scale. So if they find out there's a 0-day vulnerability, so 0-day vulnerabilities that haven't been released, so let's say that some state-sponsored or FI or foreign intelligence release it, it's doing that quite quickly. And again, we haven't really seen that. Well, we have, but not on the scale that we could. So you imagine critical national infrastructure, there's a vulnerability in some operational technology that controls water or controls X. If that came out tomorrow, you can scale as quickly as you can with AI, that could be kind of devastating, really. And again, finally, the risk to the business. I mean, cybersecurity clearly is a boardroom issue. And it's understanding, well, what are the risks to my business? Have you workshopped that? Have you tried? So, kind of cyber boardroom, go through an attack, so it's prepared, and again, practice. Now, there's a few more, but they're the main areas that any organization and then individuals can do really, just to try and prepare about what attacks they might see. Back in the days, I'm showing my age again. Do you remember the African prince who wants to give you £2 million? It was so easy then, but it clearly worked. We're not seeing the African prince, unfortunately, anymore. We're actually seeing someone that you know and love, his voice on your WhatsApp message. We're seeing an image come to you that looks like someone you know or love. We've seen a video of what looks, and again, they're creating that pressure to get you to act quite quickly. And with AI, you can do that at scale because this stuff gets better and better and better.
Yeah. So kind of harking back to your own services and at CyberQ, how do you keep up? Because obviously AI 2 years ago wasn't a thing really. That wasn't available to kind of the trade public, and certainly not to cyber hackers, etc. But the capability of that and the avenues of threats and attacks that they can use with AI has just kind of grown exponentially over the last 18 months or so. It must be really difficult for yourself as a founder and a CEO of a cybersecurity company to kind of keep on top of that. I mean, how do you respond to those challenges, and how do you kind of go back to your customers? Actually, guys, we've got a new one here. We're dealing with it, and these are the products and services we can offer you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a tough environment in cybersecurity for all of us. I mean, the beauty, I suppose, from the company our size is this what we live and breathe. It's what we do, really. I suppose the clue's in the name is CyberQ Group. So again, we live and breathe this stuff. So obviously, we're a kind of AI first security operations center, and we use AI from a defense perspective. So you get kind of blue team, which is defensive, and red, which is attacking. Offensive. So again, from our perspective, is what we live and breathe, but it's also working with our customers to understand their risks and to understand their exposures, because depending on what you see on a day-to-day basis, which is it's a cat and mouse game. As I said about physical, we've been trying to stop criminality. You made a perfect point 2,000 years ago. People, if you want to put the fire out, I'm going to charge you X amount of money. We're still doing that today in 2025, but this time we're encrypting data and giving you some. If you want it back, you're going to have to pay. So it's the same. And again, it's a cat and mouse. So for us, it's about being detailed. It's about knowing our industry, knowing the type of attacks, and of course, knowing our customers and working with our customers, because we're an extension of their team. The good thing about our client base, which is spread across the board, is that they're experts in their areas. So from kind of logistics, pharmaceuticals, etc., and they've got teams that do stuff of this, but they haven't got teams in certain cases that are fully focused on companies like ours that look after a lot of organizations, which then can provide that threat intelligence, provide that knowledge, provide that expertise back to them. So that's how we're working with our partners. And it's not necessarily a player to CyberQ Group, but one thing I'd advise organizations and most organizations, they need to look at that, because they need to have that pure play cyber company, because we're seeing it over and over and over again that it's a lapse with a particular IT company, and it's not their fault. The IT company or the network company is doing different services for you, and they're not going to have a full lens on cyber. They're going to make sure that you can access your email. They're going to make sure the networks are working. They're going to make sure your mobile phones are working. They're going to make sure that you can access, documents, and cyber's there as well. Yeah. So I do feel sorry for them at the moment, and a lot of the attacks have been blamed because of the IT, especially in the last 3 major attacks. It's been, the IT company said they have the cyber, and I almost feel that's a bit of a cop-out, really. I mean, granted, the organisation thought they had it, but in this day and age, in 2025, I think it's down to the organisation to say, well, actually, is that the right place to do it? Is that a strategic decision to give it to the IT company or the network company to do that?
Yeah, it's certainly an ever-growing challenge, isn't it? So just to kind of wrap up in the last couple of minutes, I don't want to keep you in much longer. You probably got a Halloween costume to get dressed up in.
Yeah, I'm actually going trick-or-treater.
All right, so I was just going to ask, obviously, we're always championing Birmingham and West Midlands based businesses, and yourself at CyberQ Group are Birmingham based and founded and VC backed to here. So kind of how have you found the the appetite for business and particularly for technology businesses in the Midlands? What's your experience has been since your founding over the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's great to be back because I've spent 20 odd years outside the West Midlands, but I've still kept the accent, so I'm quite proud of that. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time obviously in Italy, Middle East, and when I was at HP, kind of traveling all over. So firstly, it's great to be back in the West Midlands, probably for the last 8 years, really. It's changed massively. I mean, Birmingham as a city generally has changed massively. You can see the investment, you see the city centre. I think I can just see it from a tech scene as well. You know, we had Birmingham Tech obviously last week. This obviously was recorded on the 31st. So Birmingham Tech was a huge success. Andy Haig and his team did a fantastic job again. And I've actually saw the evolution of that. So I was fortunate to be involved in the first one, 2018. They probably won't thank me for this, but there was about 50 of us in a university. And here we are, you know, in 2025, there's probably 400, 500 people at ICC, and, you know, sponsors like IBM and CyberQ Group and so forth, sponsoring them as well. So it's definitely changed. Can we get better? Absolutely. And I think you alluded to it before. So, you know, CyberQ Group, we're Birmingham based. I'm the founder, I'm the CEO. We have a team in the UK. Obviously, we have a team in South Africa, Philippines, and the US as well. But we are a UK Birmingham business. And from a pure play cybersecurity company, so I've got to be very clear here, just doing cybersecurity. So we're not doing cyber and IT and networks, and just pure play cybersecurity in the West Midlands. I believe we're the only VC-backed cybersecurity business now. That's great for us, but bad for the West Midlands, because in my humble opinion, there should be a few more CyberQ groups, especially with the ongoing threat and what we've discussed on this podcast today, really. So I think we need to do better in regards to investing in businesses. I mean, the West Midlands is great for startups. We have lots and lots of startups, but when we look at companies over 500,000, 1 million, unfortunately, that kind of drops away. So we need to do better on that. But we are doing better. I mean, Richard Parker, who I know, is doing some great stuff around the West Midlands investment. He's investing in some key areas. Technology is clearly one of them. Birmingham Tech Week, as I alluded to before, you know, you've got 500 people in a room talking about technology. You've got some great universities in the West Midlands, you know, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Aston, UC, etc. So I've only got confidence that we're going to get better and better and better. But like any entrepreneur, I just want it faster. But I think we've got a great foundation and a great baseline to build upon. And I only see great things for the West Midlands in regards to the tech sector going forward.
Awesome. So if anyone of our listeners wanted to reach out to CyberQ Group or learn a little bit more about yourself and what you guys do, how could they do that?
Yeah, no problem at all. So there's a few ways they can come to us. So obviously the website, cyberqgroup.com. So cyberqgroup.com is a good way to get to the website. LinkedIn, we're on LinkedIn. So CyberQ Group on LinkedIn. And also on Twitter, I can't call it Twitter anymore, on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. So again, CyberQ Group, they'll find us there, and we post quite a bit. We've done some deepfake videos, again, if people are interested in that. It's a good area to get into at the moment, just with some of the stuff that we're seeing around threats, but also just in regards to marketing and so forth as well. So yeah, that's a good way to get hold of us and contribute and get involved.
Well, wish you every success in the world, Chris, and hopefully you'll staving off threats before they actually materialise. But thank you for appearing on the DME podcast.
Thank you.
See you Halloween.
Thank you. Yeah, grateful. Thank you again.